Good afternoon, people. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Spirit Journey. Good afternoon. Today is Friday, I think it's May 16th, 2025, and the time right now is about 35 after 5 p.m. Boy, what do I want to talk about today? Yes, I am an American woman, a Black American woman, and I live in Africa. I moved to this country here in Africa, Rwanda, about December 2023. I briefly had to leave for about 2.5 weeks and then came back and have been here since. And what is interesting, living on the continent, again, Africa is not a country but a continent, but yeah, I'm originally from New York City, and I was watching a lot of programs and recent programs on Africa. And to my surprise, I found some of the stories about South Africa very, very troubling. Yeah, I knew I didn't want to move to South Africa. I knew I wanted to leave America and come to Africa. And I didn't want South Africa, even though they do speak a lot of English there. The history of apartheid in a nutshell. And the people that I've met, they're not like I've met a lot of people, but I've met some people who are from there. And the dangers, the severe crime, violent crimes. And, you know, I didn't want that. But it's supposed to be a very beautiful place. And I was curious about some of the news I've been hearing. Um, all over the continent, you're hearing things. It's a lot of unrest in places, all over the world, actually, and in America, too. A lot of social unrest. It's global. It is global, the problem. And I wouldn't be surprised if you have organizations that run globally that are social engineers that are manipulating the planet. But anyway, I mean, that's just my thoughts about that. But I recently heard that you have what they call white South African people, Afrikaners. And some of them, some of the families there, they're farmers. And the fear that their land is going to be taken away by the current government of South Africa. Um, there, I mean, I don't know much about the government, but it's a black-run country, and allegedly their land is being confiscated. Most of the, excuse me, most of the land ownership is, I'm sorry, is owned by whites. A large percentage of the ownership, I forget the percentage. And the people, the white farmers, are allegedly being murdered. And the person that I knew from South Africa, um, there was a murder, and never forgot the story. There's violence all over the world, but there's a lot of senseless killings as well in South Africa. And it's sad because, I'm in my early 60s. And back in the late 70s and 80s, I was a teenager. And we would hear news of what they call apartheid, severe racism of a British-controlled country, and severe segregation. And so it always made me uncomfortable, the subject about South Africa. I felt very vulnerable hearing news about South Africa as a Black living in America. I'm from the East Coast in New York City. And so Nelson Mandela, I think, was at 1994. I'm not sure exactly, either that he got out of prison or he became the president of South Africa. So please correct me. What is the correct statement regarding Mandela? Was it in 1994 he became president, or that he got out of prison? I think the latter. But either way, it was hope. Through my perspective, hearing the news back in the day, that the country would be in good hands because you have a Black leader, and the country would know about equality and justice and all that. So fast forward, the news that I'm hearing about South Africa is quite alarming to me. Hearing about, coming from someone from the 70s and 80s as a teenager, and hoping for the best once Mandela came into power, became ruler there, president. And but I was still hearing not so much good things, the violence I heard about. I heard about a Black American woman who, a couple of years back, who wanted to go to visit South Africa in unity for the Black people there. And she was viciously SA'd by a man. And she was found wandering the streets in South Africa. She was in shock. Someone, violating her body like that. Horrible. But I was told that this person, somehow she got help and they brought her back to America. Little stories like that. And so I never, I always had this fear about South Africa. And even as a Black person, this woman that went to visit, and visiting in solidarity, she was attacked, viciously attacked sexually. And so I never had a desire to visit there. Yes, attacks, sexual violation can happen in anywhere on this planet, but it doesn't help your situation. And people, reaching out to South Africa, or sympathy for the country's, the history that happened there with apartheid. So I was also hearing recently, you have white South Africans called Afrikaners. These are the early white settlers from Europe who migrated there in Africa. And yes, many of them, they were in, under apartheid, things were segregated severely, and job opportunities, education was all favored and given to whites. When apartheid ended, it seems like a social system changed, and you had this group there that once Mandela came into power, a group of Afrikaners had gone to make a settlement for themselves. So you have whites only settlements, uh, well, I should say Afrikaner settlements, and utter poverty, utter, utter poverty. And also in the news lately in America, I still listen to American news and all that through YouTube. Um, a group of Afrikaners are maybe offered um, asylum in America because of fear of them being persecuted and land being taken away. And so you may have a handful of families. And what was interesting about that, um, the demographics, what composed of these people. There were men and women, boys and girls, young and old, and in between. And these were families. I thought that was interesting. So if they're going to be getting the asylum, they'll be leaving as families, different family groups. And so they'll be living where they'll be living and making community. But the recent migrations in the United States, where I lived in New York City, you did not see families. You saw like massive numbers of men, young men. And so if it's like a refugee situation, I didn't understand how come if it's like a refugee or your community being taken over, or whether it be due to political parties, um, um, religion, things like that. But you don't see a representation of what would consist of a society. You have men, women, boys, girls, young and old, and everything in between. You don't have that. You just have the very young, what they call military age people, and so that's what was happening. It's a lot of crime also developing. Um, so either way, I'm sorry. So these white South African people may be coming to the U.S. And so how I feel, like part of me remembers about the 1970s and 80s, and to be honest, a little sensitive about the subject of South Africa because of apartheid against Blacks, um, Asians, and mixed race people. Um, but I started thinking, I said, what if one day someone comes to where my family lives in America and say, well, you're not a Native American Indian. And so we don't want you here, you're a foreigner, and boot you out of your house. And, so I thought, I wouldn't want that to happen. I'd be very resistant. So the same as with people whites living in South Africa for many generations. They pay their taxes, whatever, they keep up their land or whatever. And so would it be fair to kick them out of their land? It seems like there's going to be a land grab. And my personal opinion, again, I don't know, I don't live there, but my feeling, what's really happening is that they want to make South Africa into a communist country or socialist um, type of environment. That's what I really think. In my opinion, I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but that's just like. So under the pretense of racism, reverse racism, they really want to uh, gather all the land because the land is owned by uh, those people who own the land the mass majority of them are white, that they want the land because they want the, I'm seeing someone write a message. They want the land because they want the, to control it. They want to control. It's all about control, but they're using the race card. Hey, Angie. I thought of some. Yes, I moved, Angie. She said, I thought you would go to Morocco. Yeah, I really thought about Morocco too. But no, I moved directly to Rwanda. Yes. It's good to see you. And Angela, I saw your face on. I mean, I don't generally go on Facebook, but I had to go on to look up something, and I saw your face on it. So I said, "Wow, yeah, it's good to hear from you, Angela." Yeah. So either way, so going to, what was I saying now? Oh, okay, with the white South African people. So I would feel funny if family members had to, were being booted out of their home uh, as a pretense that make America red Indians again. Okay. So when I look at South Africa, with that thought in mind, I said, they're there for many generations. And all of a sudden, now that the government wants to take their land away from them. So that could be problematic. I know I would feel problematic if someone wanted to take land from my, let's say, my parents or my siblings or relatives because they're not of a particular ethnic group or religious group, whatever what the label is. So, but yes, they might be going to the U.S. And I think it's all fear. I know my thoughts are always controversial to many, but fear is what fear is if you don't want someone to do that to you. And see, the U.S. allowed migrants from all over the Americas, all over the world, to come to the U.S. to get free food, free medical, free housing, etc. So if that could happen, and there a lot of crime, a lot of crime behind them, and no, not all migrants are violent, not at all. But but when you have something of an illegal nature, it attracts crime. And so, if all thing being fair, if you're going to bring in several million of people from all over the world, and we have to pay for them, so what difference will it make if you get a white South African person who's being kicked out of their land? They got to live somewhere. So what's the difference? What's the difference? So either way, I know many people will not agree with that, but you put yourself in their shoes if it were you, and you might think differently. So either way, so I watched a program also about South Africa, and I saw several videos, and one of the videos they talked about the white farmers there. I've they showed some locations. They had and they were being interviewed by Black people, and these were, I think, Blacks from I think one was from Britain. One had like a British accent. It was a man, young man from Black from Britain, and then another one of a female, and she said she was raised in Soweto. Her English was very good. And they were discussing about certain conditions. Like the guy was interviewing people, whites living in like shanty towns, severe economic hardships. And it was quite shocking to look at. Um, when I'm from New York City, and that type of poverty, destitute, um, you don't really see that in New York City. Not like that, a whole like a shanty. I mean, yes, you do have drug abuse. I would say like more, something similar to something like a shanty town. That's in California and Washington State. They have that the tent cities, and those tent cities in America is fueled by drug abuse, heavily, heavily drug abuse. It's quite horrible. Um, but seeing South Africa and this white community, and they were very nice to the black guy, very very friendly. They're relatively young. Some of the people that showed, they had like people in their 40s and then people in their 20s. They had some of them had infants, and to watch this, I feel badly for them. I actually did, and um, I never really saw something like that. It opens up your eyes about life. That yes, maybe they're the descendants of people who did horrible things to the indigenous people of South Africa, and including the Zulu uh, tribes. Um, but what someone's ancestor did 300, was it 300, 200 something years ago, what's happening now? Okay, yeah, I think apartheid ended about 30 years ago. Um, and a lot of those people were not born yet. And allegedly there is racism, what they call reverse racism in South Africa, that they really want to promote jobs to Black South Africans. And to my surprise, they had a video about what they call the colored races there in South Africa, and that the colored races in South Africa are being overlooked for jobs, and many of the what they call coloreds are in prisons, and it's really shocking to me to see this, to hear about this. Like in America, they whether you're so-called mixed race or mostly black, you're all thrown in the black category. But in South Africa, they break up things in divisions. That is foreign to me, and but it's done. Um, so it looks as though you very rarely hear about the colored population there, and I had seen videos about them, and um, I feel sorry for them. Um, they said that because they're not black, uh, they're not given certain job opportunities. And it's like, wow. And I'm wondering, what did Mandela fight for? It's really confusing for me. So it seems like as if they're promoting a pro-black South Africa. But what about the colored races there who are living in poverty? And then what about the white South African people who've been there for generations? Because under Mandela, it was said that it was supposed to be like a rainbow community of people. And so, what happened to the dream of Mandela that one country, many people, but one nation under many people? And it seems like this division is man-made, and causing friction amongst the different groups. And they all talked about this, what they call no jobs. They said there are no jobs in South Africa. Very few jobs are hard to come by. That's what they're saying. But I'm thinking, wow, they have gold and diamonds there. So you wonder, well, it has its wealth. What's happening? And um, and I would think that with the whites that do live there from long ago, the technology that they would be teaching the new generation, because it's a black-run government. So you'd think that they would teach the people living in South Africa things for jobs, building homes, but it doesn't seem to be happening. Um, the last film I watched, it was more quite shocking because it was very blunt. I didn't watch the whole thing. I probably watch the whole thing later on. Um, an organization called Dudula. It's called Dudula. It means foreign and to be forced out. The word means to be forced out. And Dudula is an organization, a grassroots organization in South Africa for the Blacks of South Africa. And there is what they call xenophobic, uh, really a hatred for foreigners in the country of South Africa with particular demographics in South Africa. The extreme Black poor of South Africa. Will you hear that bird? It's a little bird. I don't know what that is. Yeah, they have exotic birds here in Rwanda. It's quite beautiful. Yeah, it's getting darker and darker, people. Yeah, the sun is going down. And so, yeah, I didn't want to show myself, but I'm showing the curtains. Yeah, so I better hurry. Okay, so this organization of Dudula, meaning forced out, they're becoming more, they can becoming stronger, a stronger force in South Africa amongst the Blacks of South Africa. These are the very, very poor. And they're mentioning that there are a lot of foreigners in South Africa, but they're not talking about any foreign white people. They're talking about their fellow Africans. And that's what shocked me. They, I didn't know that you had other African nations visiting and going to South Africa. That I didn't know. But the documentary showed that there are foreign nationals from Africa. They showed people one person from Senegal. Sorry, my battery's getting low. Let me plug it in. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna just plug this in. The batteries are getting low. I apologize. Okay. So that should help. Sorry about that. Okay. So I hope you guys can hear me. So they had someone from Nigeria, Senegal. This one guy's father was from Rhodesia. He has a South African mom and a Rhodesian father, Black Rhodesian father. And so ethnically, racially, they're all Black people, Sub-Sahara people. And they're saying that there is a severe drug problem in the country of South Africa. And the Blacks of South Africa are abusing drugs big time. And that they're blaming the foreigners who are the drug peddlers, they're saying, And this one woman was crying because she had a son who was abusing drugs, and he got killed trying to rob. It's very sad, but she said was, how much she hates foreigners because her son died, and the foreigners are controlling the drugs there. But when you look in the community, like as an outsider, I don't know who's local or whatever. They both, phenotypically, you really wouldn't know unless you're from there. And this Dudula organization is, some people would consider them a vigilante group. Others, people who are grassroots organization, because the local government's not helping in the migrant situation or the drug situation. They're taking matters in their own hand. So they're judge and jury and executioner. And they're getting more political power, because now you have the job market in South Africa is extremely limited, and it's affecting everyone. You have poor whites that cannot find work. You have blacks who cannot find jobs. And then you have the so-called colored population group. And many of them are not are denied jobs as well. So it's interesting that the coloreds are being overlooked the jobs because they're not considered black, but yet in America they'd be classified as black, but because they're mixed race, they want to give the priorities to the black population, even though historically these other people are from there, but they are mixed bloods. So it's unfortunate, but they're falling into drugs also and gangs. So it's quite sad. And it's really no different what happens in New York. You have the underprivileged or black population living in New York City, and it's plagued by drugs. Plagued by drugs. And when you have drugs, you need money to supply those drugs. And so they fall into, doing criminality to support their habit, you know. So it's really no different what happens in America and what's happening in South Africa. It seems so similar. I read some of the comments on that particular video on the Dudulas of South Africa. And people, I didn't watch the whole thing, but most of it. And I was reading some of the comments, and they're focused on the woman whose son died for using drugs and did some criminality to get his money to buy his drugs, and he died in the process. And so I can see that, you're grieving parent and you have a child that's gone. You want to blame someone, you don't want to blame yourself. And so what you do, you try to see what other commonality is behind this drug abuse. And a lot of the drug abuse, who's selling the drugs. So rather than, I think, attacking, they're blaming it on foreigners. But these people, it's like poor abusing the poor. You really don't see any, they're all struggling. It's quite sad for anybody to sell drugs to anybody. So I could agree that an organization to remove drug dealers, oh yes. But when they did this particular thing, according to the documentary, you had a person, you had a man like in his 40s. He had children. They lived in a very small, modest house. And the Dudutla organization booted his family out of the home. And he was interviewed by the BBC. It was a black interviewer. And they asked him, what happened to you? They said that the man said that he had pushed out of his home and his job. He had a job. And because, get this, people, get this. His father is an African, but from Rhodesia. His mother is a native black South African woman. He was born in South Africa, but they still considered him a foreigner, even though he had his papers. He had his papers to prove he was a citizen, but he was still perceived, regardless of his paperwork, as a foreigner, and so they kicked him out. That I consider a vigilante and thuggery, because you're not the government. He had his papers to prove his citizenship, so he's not a foreigner. So the perception of being considered a foreigner, to have the perception that you're a foreigner was enough to get you kicked out. And I would imagine that Mandela is turning over in his grave. Is this black unity, people? Is this black unity to take a black man's means of existence, and because you don't like, because whatever, he just, to me, just a regular black dude taking care of his children, his black children, and now he's homeless without his job, because I think his job was in his home. And so you're making it worse for your fellow man. And it's justified. I am shocked by this. And I'm concerned. I think I'm sharing this because I'm concerned as someone living in a country, living in Africa, I should say, living in Africa. And what if one day the political climate changes? I heard that this country may be getting, I'm not sure if their status would be refugee or just regular migrant migrant workers. I don't know. But what if the numbers get very high? Now, they will, according to the news, they'll be getting $100,000, I think, per person. Excuse me. So it's cheaper to send, like the U.S. had the agreement with a Central American country, but it was 1,000. So it was cheaper, and